Hi everybody, welcome back to the TETRIX RoboBench video series. This is Tim, and it is my privilege and pleasure to have a guest with me today, and this is Aaron Maurer. Aaron, I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little about where you're from and what you've done, what your background is.
Sure. My name is Aaron Maurer from Bettendorf, Iowa, where I'm now the STEM lead overseeing 21 school districts in STEM education. I'm also the founder of 212 STEAM Labs, a nonprofit to empower students in STEM education. And a little bit of my background is a robot enthusiast as well as a coffee consumer. Spent 13 years in a middle school setting, creating maker spaces, designing project-based learning, and trying to infuse as much hands-on learning as I possibly can in all the core curriculum, and as well as before and after school.
Cool. And I'm going to add to that a little bit that, as you know, Pittsco's always had a passion about innovating and creating products that positively impact learners. And as a part of that, we have actively gone out and we sought teachers that are innovators and hands-on people working in the industry to actually give us advice. And we call them our TAG group, the Teachers Advisory Group. And Aaron has been a part of that group for us. And as part of that group, he's been able to work on some special projects for us. And he's here today to help give feedback on one of those projects. So we're going to go ahead and talk about one of our newest projects, which is Coding Essentials. And this is a guide that we wrote to kind of take that next step into coding. When we were thinking about this, one of the things, Aaron, that I asked myself is, as a coder, why am I doing this particular bit of code? What's the background that's going to take me beyond just copy and paste, and what's the rationale and why I'm doing that? So that's one of the things that we had in mind when we created this particular guide, is to be that next step for that intro coder. So if you don't mind, we're going to go ahead and talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. Let's get into it.
Good. Okay, Aaron, so we have got this brand new guide, Coding Essentials, and it is around our Prism, and we actually have a build that we do with this. So tell me, now you're an experienced, innovative type teacher. You're a teacher that probably, if we didn't provide this at all, you would actually have this in your classroom as that innovator. As you reviewed this, can you kind of give me an idea, what did this bring for you as that innovative teacher into as a part of your tool set? What did this bring for you?
Sure. So a couple of things as we've used and kind of sampled it. One, it provides a framework. I think sometimes, even though you're innovative, sometimes you run into the idea where you've got the big picture ideas, but you sometimes neglect like the scope and sequence of how should it properly flow, especially when you're working with students who maybe are a little stressed or a little standoffish by robots. When you're a robot enthusiast, you forget not everybody just jumps in head over heels for it. So it was a good reminder of this is how we can kind of segment our learning. The other thing that I really liked, one of my favorite activities was the smart car activity. And so what it did was it provided a platform for me as an innovator to come up with new ideas. And so we looked at what was in there, and then it allowed us to scale it up, where we went through and we're in the process now of designing a zombie city. And so we're going to upgrade the basics just because we're like, oh, we could take that and let's add our own flavor to it. And so it provides a good reminder of how to get started and how to move things through. But then it also kind of planted the seeds for us to take our ideas and take it to that next level.
Cool. Now, and just to remind everybody, you not only just reviewed this yourself, you actually did work with this with your kids, right?
Yes.
So you had actually practical experience of putting this into the classroom.
Right.
So I'm going to flip it around a little bit and ask you to kind of put yourself out of that innovative teacher's role and into more of the role of a teacher that is a novice, a beginner, and maybe a little bit intimidated by this. What do you think this kind of product would give to them? What would it bring for them to the table?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if you look at like this robot build here, to someone who maybe isn't comfortable with it, this can be very overwhelming. This is an overwhelming concept to think like you can make this. The reality is that you can. Like, this is not an impossible task. And so the guide provides very clear directions on how to actually build this design here. So it kind of knocks down that overwhelming sense that, it's impossible. The other thing that it provides is it gives you everything you need to be successful. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I think as we see more and more educators wanting to dabble into robotics and coding, but not sure how, it provides them the tools and the steps and information necessary to kind of get from point A, where they're kind of like, oh my gosh, I can't do this, to getting to point B, we're going, hey, look what I built. I did this, and I'm talking from the teacher standpoint, let alone the students that are going to get the excitement of making the ideas come to life, the ideas from their head and bringing it to the real world.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the things that the expectations for the students as far as what they gleaned from this guide and some of the concepts that they covered and learned. Are you comfortable with what they took away? I mean, because we tried to cover loops, we tried to cover called functions, variables, comparison statements, conditional statements. How do you feel the students reacted to that? What did they take away?
Yeah, I think it's just a way of communication. I mean, that's usually how we talk about it in the classroom. It's just like learning a foreign language. This is a way for us to communicate, in our case, to communicate with a robot to complete a task. And so what we have to do with kids are teach them those skills and teach them those different skills and functions and variables and orders of operation when we talk about coding to streamline the process. How do we make it where what we have in our mind, what we want the robot to do, how do we actually make that come alive and happen? And so some of the things that we have to do is teach the kids, what are the words? How do we actually communicate so this robot understands what it is that we're saying? We talk about that in a very streamlined process. And so as they're trying to brainstorm and we're sketching out, okay, we want our robot to do this task, what does that look like? And then, okay, so what are the words that we need to use? What's the coding language that we've got to bring to the table in order to make that happen? And so we're looking at that and we're just building their vocabulary in order to do the tasks that they want to do.
Okay, Aaron, so I think I was hearing some things here that I want to bring out because I heard vocabulary and things like that. It sounds like that they were areas that would be kind of cross-curricular, maybe hit language arts and things like that. So help me out here. Are we talking about a process or an activity that is going to cross over and actually be used by more than just the science teacher in robotics?
I think it has to be that way. I think one of the things that we're seeing in education is we have to stop teaching in silos, where we go here for language arts and we go here for math and we're going to go here for robots. And we have to start to teach kids, as well as the education system, that things run parallel. They all immerse together. And so what we're doing is taking an opportunity to provide kids a chance to develop their soft skills, the creativity, the critical thinking, the collaboration, all those things that are employability skills. And with this Coding Essentials and with Robot, this is one platform on which we can develop those skills. And what we're trying to do is no different than the language arts classroom, where they're trying to teach them how to write and communicate. And looking at math, trying to how to problem solve, and then how do we sell that idea of this is how I was thinking to solve this problem. And so we have to get away from, I must go to this room for this robot class, and the bell rings, and then all of a sudden I'm going to forget everything I did because now I'm going to go over to the science classroom. We have to start to help the kids see how everything connects. There's bridges, and we're all working through the same goal. We just have different platforms and ways in which we're trying to achieve those goals.
Awesome. So that leads me into the next question as far as the progression. We tried to hit a progression in this as far as activities, and we've got one build activity where they build this particular robot. Then we have actually 5 basic activities, and each one of those activities has what we call hack the code, and then we have that grand culminating challenge at the end. How did that progression work for you, and what did you see as the real value in that?
Right, so they're each building blocks, and so I do believe that we have to provide a base knowledge, a skill set. We just can't say, have at it. It just doesn't work. And so the activities allow that progression to happen from, okay, I finally have my robot built, now what? And activity 1 helps you start to understand how things operate with the Prism. And then, as we move in, now we're getting into movement, we're getting into sensors, we're getting into everything starts to progress, leading into this open-ended challenge at the end. And so we can't lose sight of just throwing kids at it and going, best of luck to you. We've got to have these checkpoints along the way to make sure the learning's happening. And so there is that nice progression. Along the way, as any classroom, we know we're going to have kids that solve things very quickly. And that's where like the hack elements start to come in. Here are these extension activities. So, if we're not ready to quite move everybody on, here are these other things that we can do, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And there's the teacher notes in there, which if you're a teacher trying to figure out, how do I make this happen? There's all this information that kind of gets you thinking before you kind of set them free in the challenges. And so everything is provided in there to kind of give you everything you need. But what's nice about it is it's not so scripted that you can't, derail, or in my case where I get an idea of going, oh, I want to do this. I can easily do that and still infuse myself right back into the next activity.
So how about the real world connection? Do you feel like the kids made a connection to what they're doing in the classroom with this to what they would see at home or what they would see out in the world every day? Did we? Because we tried to do that, but I want to make sure that we kind of met that particular challenge in this.
I think the ideas and the concepts are there. I believe that it comes down to the educator in the classroom to bring those ideas to life. And so as you're looking at the activity with the smart cars, as we're looking at all the things happening in the automobile industry, there's so many insertion points to talk about why things happen. And even more importantly, to get them to understand like how things work. We were talking before camera trying to get a robot to walk. And how amazing the human body is. And we take things for granted. We take a turn signal for granted. We hit a lever and it lights up. Well, how in the world does that work? And we're helping kids start to understand that how piece and not just taking it for granted. We are a society of consumers and we need to start creating more producers. And so in order to do that, we kind of got to look under the hood, so to speak, and figure out, oh my gosh, all these things have to happen for something as simple as turning on a light. And so this provides those opportunities and those ideas to kind of help teachers to go, oh, I need to bring that to the forefront.
Awesome. So to kind of wrap all this up, and you can tell, I can tell here, and I'm sure that you can too, that Aaron has a passion for this and has been doing this a long time. But hopefully you can catch a little bit of that and feel a little bit of that passion that we share about robotics and about this particular product in particular, and how it might actually improve your classroom and what you're doing with the kids, not only in robotics, but also in those other skill building areas for language arts and STEAM, and as far as what you're doing outside of now the teaching realm. So like we always say, have fun, build some robots, and come back and see us.